Welcome to our weekly broadcast of the African Treasures. Here we bring to you African arts, culture, and music. We also discuss issues of concern to people of the African descent in America, the Caribbean, South America, Africa, and all over the world. We invite you to come and see Africa in a positive light. So stay tuned and tell your friends to do the same.
Welcome to another episode of the African Treasures. I'm Dr. Michael Okeke, your host. Today's topic is immigration, and my guest is Uzo Akpele, attorney at law. Welcome to African Treasures.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yes, I'm pleased to have you. Attorney Akpele, you've been in the practice of law here for how long?
For 6 years now.
For 6 years, and immigration is your area of concentration.
That's correct.
How did you get interested in immigration?
It was by chance. I did an externship at Catholic Social Services. Then it was called, now it's called Catholic Charities of Atlanta. Mm-hmm. I worked in their immigration clinic and I just got hooked. The people there are very kind, they're very compassionate, and they work for the poorest of immigrants. And
they help them get
their
settled.
Papers. Yes, yeah, yes. They just help them get their paperwork, do their filings sometimes. And also,
are these refugees?
They would be refugees or just people who have been here for a while.
You go to the Catholic establishment, they help you out?
Yes, you go to Catholic Charities down West Bistry.
Yes.
And then that's where they have their immigration office. It's a little law office, and it's staffed by, I think, maybe 2 attorneys, 2 staff attorneys or so, and then a bunch of volunteers.
You did your intern there when you were?
Yes, an externship there. I worked there for credit in school.
Yeah.
While in my final year in law school.
Attorney Akpele, how can one live legally in the United States?
Well,
for visitors and immigrants.
Yes, for one to be living legal in the U.S., one needs to have one's visa, a non-immigrant visa that just lets one live and work in the U.S. Otherwise, one would have to have a green card, what's called a green card. That's obtained permanent resident status.
Mm-hmm. But you know, not everybody comes here with a visa. I mean, with the right papers.
Would that mean like you come in and your status changes, perhaps?
So how do you handle things if somebody comes here without the right? I mean, there are people who come through the fence, and that's why they're building out the walls around the Mexico border.
Well, for people who walk in, that's crossing the border, just walking across the U.S. borders.
Yeah. They don't have visa?
No, they do not. If they did, they would fly in and be inspected, I suppose. But people who, that's not encouraged, that's not legal, and that's not the correct way to come into the United States. The correct way would be to go to the U.S. consulate in your own native country and obtain a visa, and that would bring you into the U.S. But there are people who come in. Sometimes they're running so fast, so hard from whatever it is they are running away from in their home countries, and they feel they have no option but to run across, not to be encouraged anyways. But if that happens, it really does foreclose any chance of getting legal papers to a large extent.
Right.
To a large extent.
Now, so we're talking about people who have come in here legally.
Yes, coming in legally is a different thing. Maybe that means you got a visa.
Right, that's what I'm talking about.
Yes, you got a visa in your country, and then you'd come into the U.S. based with your visa.
And how do you transition from that to a green card status?
Okay.
If you want to stay. Because some people come in, they want to go back.
Yes, there's people who come in as students, maybe an F student. You come in, you do your studies, you go on exchange visitor, or just a tourist, and you do your thing and you go back. However, sometimes people come in one non-immigrant status and decide to stay. Maybe they get a good job offer, and they think, I can spend the rest of my life working this job, and they want to stay. Or sometimes they just meet a nice U.S. citizen or even a permanent resident, and they get married.
Fall in love first.
Fall in love and get married.
And then get married.
And get married.
Not get married and fall in love.
Well.
Okay. What kind of rights does a permanent resident have in the United States? Somebody with a green card status.
Well, one who is a permanent resident in this country, basically they can do everything except that they can't vote or be voted for. Okay. And they must not register to vote, must not even register to vote.
It used to be years ago, maybe in the 80s or 70s when I got here, because I've been here for a long time. If you have a green card, you can travel out, but you have to come in here you have to come back here within a year to keep your green card active. What is it now?
It's still essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
Except in some situations, if you know you're going to be out for a long time, up to a year, you might actually do a file. There's a particular filing you could do to maintain permanent residence so that you will not be deemed to have abandoned your permanent residence.
Yeah.
And also, while one is outside the U.S. for an extended period, it would be good to maintain your U.S. ties, keep paying your U.S. taxes. If you own property, might be good to maybe rent it out. Don't just dispose of it.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever shows that you still have ties in the U.S., if you maintain those ties, that will help you show after a long absence, an extended absence, that you really did not intend to abandon permanent residence.
Yeah. But what about, somebody was telling me the other time that the length of time allowed for you to stay outside the United States has shortened to 6 months. What's the veracity of that?
I am not aware of that. I do know that.
So it's still 1 year?
Yes. You're not bound to stay for maybe 6 months and then come back.
Yeah.
But we must be. But one thing to be sure about: the permanent resident card, the green card, may not be used like a visa. Okay. You spend more time outside the U.S. and then you come back into the U.S. for a little while and then go out again. No. That's not allowed. The permanent resident card implies you must live in the U.S. You may, of course, go visit.
Okay.
But it looks like ordinarily, if you're living somewhere, you live most of the time there, and then you can go visit somewhere else and come back.
Okay. Well, Attorney Okeke, we're going to take a little break, a little station break, and we'll be back.
Okay.
And please don't go away. My guest is Attorney Uzo Okeke. We're discussing immigration. We're back again with Tony Akpele discussing immigration. Before we left, we're talking about people who, the length of time you are allowed to stay outside the United States if you have a green card. Now, but I want to skip over that and go to, there are a lot of people here who come without their own passport or their own name, in their own name. So we know that exists. Are you aware of that?
I am.
Oh, you are? Mm-hmm. Okay. How can you help somebody like that? Or are they beyond help? Somebody wants to obtain legal status.
It's really difficult. It's a very difficult one.
Even if they marry somebody?
Even if they didn't marry, because you have to first of all show who you are.
Okay.
And who did you tell the immigration officer you were when you came in?
Yes.
It's very important, because you can't just jump from being one person to being another person.
Yeah.
But most immigration lawyers would actually look and ask, why did you have that need to come in with somebody else's passport? And if you did ask that question, sometimes you might find out you're looking at somebody who has an asylum case, who's running away from his country where he's being persecuted, maybe because of his religious beliefs.
What if the country is not at war? How can you prove persecution?
Persecution, that doesn't mean war in your country. It just means you're being treated really, really, really badly.
By who?
The authorities in your country. Or people whom the government authorities do not want to or are unable to prosecute.
Yeah. Okay.
So sometimes if you look at people who have come in with somebody else's passport, it might actually be an asylum case looking you in the face.
Right.
And then you have to make that call.
Okay.
Do you go ahead and counsel your client to apply for asylum? But at all points in time, coming in with somebody else's passport puts one in a very, very, very bad position. And a lot of the times, they're really not able to do anything, because you can't even establish your own identity at that point in time.
So, but there are people who have come in here with visiting visa or student visa, and they have overstayed their welcome. And they're now, they were authorized to stay here for about 6 months, and now they're about here for a year or two. How can that person obtain legal status? Is it possible? Are there avenues?
Well, yes, there are. But first of all, of course, the caveat is you should not overstay your status. There's always extensions of status, or you can extend your status or change from one status to another. Always try to maintain status. However, in certain cases, somebody who has fallen out of status, and sometimes that happens really inadvertently. It might not necessarily be planned. If they turn around and in a few years' time down the line they've never left and they've ended up getting married, maybe they fall in love with a U.S. citizen and they get married, the service and the laws do allow forgiveness of that overstay.
So
if you get married to a U.S. citizen, the law will forgive your overstay.
So they will overlook all those...
it will be forgiven.
Okay. Because I've always wondered about that. You know, some people come in, they overstay for one reason or the other. And then maybe they got student visa, but after graduation they stayed. Or maybe they didn't continue with the education. And they keep wondering, you know, how can they get legal status? And then when you do apply for a change of status, they require you to be...
In status.
In status.
Because you need to be in one status before you can change to another status. That's the way it works.
And that creates a dilemma there.
Well, a dilemma created by that person.
Okay.
Going into all this, remember, it is the person who is here as an alien visiting or living here who has created the dilemma sometimes. The law sometimes is able to assist.
So there's forgiveness.
There is forgiveness in certain cases.
In some cases.
Yes.
Okay. Well, what about those who, for one reason or the other, have been arrested for DUI or something while they, before they start applying, they have something on their record? Does that affect their application?
In certain cases, and it's
not just DUI. I just use DUI as an excuse.
As a criminal conviction.
Right. Some criminal record.
Criminal convictions are not good.
They're not good.
They are not good at all.
But if you have traffic.
Regular
citations?
Traffic citations are not, they are overlooked. They're not considered serious. You run the red light, that's not considered something that will put a mark on your immigration records, on your records, on your criminal background records. Anyways, The problem would come if you run a ticket, if you run the light, you're cited, you're given a citation, asked to come to court. You don't show up. It becomes a different thing. And once there's a criminal situation,
bench warrant and all that,
like a bench warrant is issued, but once there's a criminal conviction in one's records, it begins to hurt the person's chances of being able to obtain permanent resident status, because certain offenses are called aggravated felonies, or they could be classed as crimes involving moral turpitude. And once they're classed like so, if one is guilty of such an offense, or has been adjudicated guilty, or even if the person has admitted to facts that would lead to a finding of that crime, one may be ineligible to adjust. But bear in mind, not all criminal convictions.
What about somebody caught shoplifting? Or somebody...
That's not nice. Shoplifting is not. Yes, that's a whole laundry list. You know, the lawyers immigration lawyers have tried to write books and compile a laundry list of things, how the classifications of offenses and how they're classified, whether they would be found moral crimes involving moral turpitude, or whether they could be classed as aggravated felonies. So most immigration lawyers are very knowledgeable. They can tell if once you come in and they look at your paperwork from the courts, they're able to tell you, see what you are up against. But definitely a criminal conviction is not good.
Well, Attorney Okeke, let's hold it there and go for another station break. It comes very quick.
Okay.
Well, please don't go away. We'll be right back. The topic is immigration, and my guest is Uzo Okeke, attorney at law. Welcome again.
Thank you.
We're talking about different types of offenses that can make it difficult for an applicant wanting to change his or her status to do so. And we have a lot of people in this society who are maybe caught in that net, but they don't know what to do. And they're afraid to ask because they don't know who they're going to talk to and what that person is going to do with that information. So we have people who are involved in domestic situations where they have been arrested, jailed, and stuff like that. And we have some who have been accused of one thing or the other, and on a record, they are afraid. But what I want to ask you, Attorney Okeke, is this. What about deportation? What type of thing would amount to somebody being deported?
What would lead to somebody being deported? Number one, being here without status.
Okay.
If somebody is here and on a student visa which has expired, which is over, we come in as a tourist and the period of stay granted you at the airport has expired, you're now out of status. If the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, now they're called ICE, if they see you, if they come across you, you are going to be picked up.
They'll ice you.
And believe me, you get iced.
Now,
and the person will be sent out.
Now, who pays for the transportation? The flight and everything? The U.S. government picks the tab?
You know, I'm not sure about who picks up that tab.
I keep wondering about that.
I am not sure.
Is that going to be a cheap way of flying home?
I am not sure. Maybe somebody does they actually go back and try to recoup their money. I cannot tell you that for sure. I do not know. But I do know that once somebody is picked up by ICE, there may or may not be a removal proceedings. Sometimes if
no hearing.
There may not be.
But sometimes these people are held in detention for over 2, 3, 4 months.
Yes, sometimes.
Why are they kept for that long?
There are certain classes of people who will not be allowed out of detention, who may not come out on bond while they are waiting for their...
Why don't you send them home?
Well, you cannot send them home straight because they have to go through due process. They must have that day in court. And
I thought due process is only available to citizens. Or is this available to everybody?
In most legal permanent residents have due process.
Okay.
But sometimes what keeps somebody in detention for a long time would possibly be maybe the nature of the offense one has committed.
Okay.
Yes, there's in certain situations where detention is mandatory.
Right.
And you do realize we're just trying to quickly touch on everything.
No, we don't have enough time to go into everything. I understand that, and of course, anybody who wants further information can call you.
Or just call an immigration lawyer.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them.
But it's good to call you, though, because they've started something here. You started something here, and anybody who wants further information can call you, because your name is listed right on the, I mean, your number is listed under your name. So anybody who can really...
That would be nice.
Yeah, would want further information can call you and can elaborate, expatiate on all these things. But it's something... Now, what about children who were born by illegal aliens?
You know, I'll first of all jump in, and I hate to say illegal.
I'm sorry.
People out of status,
Out of status, I'm sorry.
Yes, everybody is entitled to dig. Nobody's illegal. Maybe you're out of status here and there, yes. However,
all right,
children...
I stand corrected.
Children who are born here in the U.S., anybody who was born in the United States or its possessions is a United States citizen, a citizen of the U.S. with all full rights and privileges and whatever it attaches. It does not matter that the person's parents are not here with their paperwork, are out of status.
So when you deport the mama, what do you do to the baby?
Well, as it's unfortunate. If you do not, you either have to leave your kids with relations here to care for them if you insist on them living in their country, or you may take them along with you.
I thought the country cares a lot about children.
It sure does. It sure does.
So when you deport the mama and leave the baby, or you tell the baby to go with your mama?
Well, I can say that it's not very fair. Sometimes you have kids with special needs, especially having to return to countries which are underdeveloped. And when that happens, those children suffer. Recently, there's been a call for a comprehensive change in the immigration laws, not just a hodgepodge thing, patching it here, patching it there to maybe please certain interest groups, but something that would change the laws of the country. The immigration laws, they're rather quite outdated, and may bring them up to speed, given the different circumstances we're coming across.
Now, that's I don't know if it's a misconception or correct information, but some people, some foreigners think that when they come into the United States as visitors and then buy a lot of property, that automatically qualifies them to have their status changed. Ownership of property.
Ownership of property does not give one permanent residence or citizenship on its own.
It doesn't help.
However, there is indeed a way to obtain permanent residence in the United States based on one having invested a certain amount of money. It's usually a lot.
So it's good for the rich, and the poor would not have it. The rich will have it, and the poor will not.
Well, remember that the country also has the United States also has its own interests to protect. It is better to bring in people who will invest in your country and make the economy more buoyant than bringing in people.
I thought we're all equal under the law.
We are equal under the law.
But then the rich can buy their way into the status, and the poor,
it's not just a question of buying in, because when somebody invests that money, the whole idea is you should also employ a certain number of people. So you're creating jobs, and when you're creating jobs, you're not employing a rich man like yourself. You're employing somebody who is not as well placed economically as yourself. So in that case, it's still, if you look at it that way, you bring in this money, you help bring up other people.
So it comes down, my point, it comes down to...
Yes, if you have enough money, you may actually be able to buy yourself a green card. Is that what you want to hear, Dr. Okeke?
No, that's what it suggests, because it looks like, the law is made, but it's skewed, when you're talking about people who have money. If they can buy enough property, buy all these companies that can provide jobs for the poor, yes, we'll give them...
and also remember...
They have...
I will tell you this. Remember, there's also the diversity lottery, the visa lottery.
Yeah.
That's a bit more... It tends to balance out situations. If anything, will that make you happy? Because anybody who wins the visa lottery, be you poor, be you rich, if you can meet the requirements, you'll be issued an immigrant visa and you can come live in the U.S. The requirements, I should have the equivalent of a high school degree. You should have completed 12 years education in your home country.
Now let me ask you this, and because our time is running out. Now, when you see people who are from countries that don't speak English. They come in here, they go through this thing, and they get their citizenship. I'm talking about citizenship now, I'm not talking about immigration. And then when some people come from African countries, I don't know if they are given the same treatment, because it looks like when you go through these tests that they go through before you become citizen, you have to know English. But some of these people who are admitted as citizens don't even speak a word of English. So I'm beginning to wonder, what type of test do they administer to them, and is it equal to the one that they administer to people coming from African countries?
So long as the naturalization tests are concerned, I would say they are fair. Everybody gets the same test. There's a test of English language. There's a test of civics, knowledge of the U.S. laws, histories, and stuff like that. Everybody gets the same test. Admittedly, people who speak other languages, whose native tongues, whose first languages is not English, they may have a harder time of it. But think of it. There's French-speaking people from other parts of the world in Europe. There's Spanish-speaking people. There's Portuguese. And we haven't even talked about the other Asian languages. Everybody has a struggle. If English is not your first language, or you haven't learned to speak English before coming here, it is indeed a struggle to learn and pass the English test, the naturalization test, that is. But people do manage. And however, though there is maybe you've seen people who can't speak English, still U.S. citizens.
And you keep on wondering, how did they go
There is indeed something that might have happened. They are older people. There is an exception.
For older people?
For older people who have lived here a certain number of years, or who have a disability.
And when you say old, what age is old?
I do
from
believe
50, 60,
I do believe as from 70, and you've lived here for a certain number of years with your green card.
Oh, okay.
After a while, if you just haven't managed.
5 years?
No, it's about 15 years.
15 years,
yeah.
okay.
After a long time, after a long time, you'll be able to take that test of English will be waived.
Right. Now, once you become a permanent resident, is it really permanent? The permanent residency, the green card, is not really permanent, is it?
Well, it's not permanent.
So why is it called permanent residence?
Well, it lets you live here permanently if you behave well. That's what, in short form, I think.
And what makes you lose your status, or do they take it back?
It can
if you violate.
It can be withdrawn in certain and then not just, and once it's withdrawn, remember, you no longer have any reason to live in the U.S.
Yeah.
You put in proceedings. What can make one lose permanent residence? You could be found to have abandoned it, like we discussed earlier.
Yes,
You're just staying out too long, meaning you really didn't mean to be permanent in the U.S. yourself.
Right.
Also, those criminal convictions.
Right.
Whatever can get somebody violates the immigration laws. Voting is not good, although they will not. Although the ICE will not come and catch you once you've registered to vote, but you could be applying to naturalize, and you're asked, have you ever voted or registered to vote? If you say yes,
that's a violation right there.
That's a violation, and it could.
If you're a citizen, can your citizenship be withdrawn or revoked?
It could be, possibly.
These days?
It could be.
But when did they start doing it? Because
it's always been like that. Do you remember the case of someone called John Damian York?
Okay.
It could be withdrawn if one obtains citizenship improperly.
Fraudulently.
Maybe if concealed a fact, a material fact, at your naturalization interview, and somehow it comes to their notice, they can denaturalization proceedings can be instituted against the person.
Attorney Okeke, it's getting very interesting. I have a whole lot to talk about, but unfortunately we're running out of time.
Okay.
And I want to thank you for coming to the show.
Well, thank you.
And maybe you can come back and let's talk about this a little more, because it's on the minds of a lot of people.
I know, and I should be happy to come back.
Yes, we'd love you to come back. And with this, we're going to round it up. And again, like I said, topic of today is immigration, and our guest is Uzo Okeke. Thanks for watching, and thanks for allowing us to come into your home.
Thank you for watching, and please join us again next week at the same time as we continue to share with you the treasures of Africa.